Okay, we're recording. It's August 24th. Tuesday? Is it Tuesday? I don't even know. The class today is going to be just the next step from what we talked about last time. If you're working on your outline, we're going to transition into your first draft. If you're already on the first draft, well, I'm going to post a place where you can turn it in and a little bit of grading info, although I'll add more later. So here's the deal. Do I have this ready to go in some tab? Probably. So last time we talked about the outline, and the outline has your plot stuff, like your character has a goal and they try something and they encounter resistance and they escalate the conflict until some kind of climax and something changes. Doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be the whole world, but your character should change a little bit. And all of that stuff, I'm not going to type again because it was kind of a big chunk of bullet points. And if you want, you can click the link right here to go to that assignment with all that stuff. The second thing that needs to be in your first draft, okay, so all that stuff in the outline is in the first draft, of course, except it's in sentences and paragraphs and pages instead of bullet points and little categories. But that stuff is in there. And by the way, you could change your mind. If you had something in the outline and you decide, oh, I'm going to make a slightly different ending or whatever, you can. You're never locked in. But the second thing is going to be the stuff that isn't in the outline. When you're writing a story for real, it's going to have description, dialogue, question. Yeah. So description is going to depend on what your story is and where it's set and what's going on. If you're in a fantasy world, you probably need to take some time at the beginning to tell us about the world and who's in it. You know, are we talking about humans or do we have elves or whatever? If you have magic, you got to tell us how the magic works and who can do it and what kind of item do they need and all of that. And if you're doing some other type of story, you'll have some other type of thing. If you're doing a story about the fashion world and people who are always, you know, like a Zoolander type thing, you might have a lot about their clothes and their brands and their status. But not every story, just the ones where it needs it. So it depends. Whatever you need and whatever flavor would help, put that stuff in there. And especially at the beginning. And then you also want at least a little bit of dialogue. Some stories only have a tiny bit, some stories will have a lot. But I want you to try at least one bit of speech. So I know we've read one story already that breaks the rules. We read the one William Carlos Williams story where he doesn't use quotation marks because that's what the cool people did at the time. But let's start off by just being the basic rule followers that we are. Put quotes around if it's the exact words that somebody says. If it's a summary, you don't have to. If it's something like the narrator says, oh, I asked the clerk if Bob was there and he said that Bob had left for the day. That's a summary of what they say and it's not in quotes. But if it's like, hi, I'm looking for Bob, and then the next line is, he's not here, that would be in quotes. Okay. Speaking of that, whenever you switch between people, whenever you have a new person, hit enter and go to the next line or the next paragraph because that makes it 1,000 times easier to read. If you're having a sort of vertical motion to it and your eyes going down the page, just like it would if you're reading a play or a script, then you don't even need the he said, she said. You can kind of skip all that. Your eye just glances over it, but you know who's who just because of the spacing and everything. If you have a single paragraph with multiple people and it's like one guy and then another one and then another one all in one block, it's really hard. You only want to do that if you're trying to be confusing, if you're trying to make a scene where people are shouting over each other or something. But that should be pretty rare. So I'll go back later and add more details into this that say like, oh, this part is 10 points and this part is whatever. But we're going to start simple. And finally, the last category is length. You want it to be 1,000 words, which is not that much, but it's a nice round number. And if you go over, that's totally fine. I don't think we need to pick a maximum, but let's just say 10K for now. But even if you go over that, that's fine. It wouldn't take me that long to read. So I'm going to make this an assessment grade because we need something in the assessment category. And I'm going to make it seemingly big. It's going to be 75 points. But here's the thing. It's all proportional. So if we have another 75 and a 50 and 100 at the end, then this is not really going to be a huge chunk of your grade. It's going to be spread out over the future ones later. But if I make it small, if everything is small, and then the final is 100 at the end, then that thing is way too overwhelming, and that is like, half a grade or something. So I want to make them balanced a little bit. In every class, your final thing is 100, whether it's a test or a paper or whatever. And so if the other guys are too small, then they don't matter in the end. And I want them to matter, okay? I want the first draft and the second draft and whatever else we do to be pretty formidable. So that's it. I'm going to continue today to look at the outlines. I saw some that were turned in that I haven't seen yet. I saw some where I've sent feedback, sent it back to the person, and they resubmitted it, and that's fine too. Whenever I put feedback, it's not telling you if something's wrong, okay? It's not like the red ink of, hey, change this, delete this, whatever. It's like, hey, what if we did this? Or what if you did this in the second draft or something? It's just following along, collaborating, getting ideas out there. So today, if you're working on the outline, that's great. You're not behind. If you're doing the first draft, that's also great. If you want to turn it in, you can. I'll look at it and probably send it back with comments, but you don't have to turn it in now. I'm going to put the due date next week, Monday, but don't let that be too imposing if you ended up turning it in a day or two after that. Totally fine. I just want to pick a day. So I'm going to hit assign now and put it on there, and then I will spend the rest of the period. Wait, I got to fill in the actual link to the video. I'll spend the rest of the period answering questions, looking at stuff, commenting, maybe updating some grades. Who knows? Thanks.